The fourth prophecy on the list is also from the New Testament, and it's very interesting, at least to me. I'm extremely interested in the nature of evil, and this verse is very telling of what the generation that sees the rapture will be like. 2 Timothy 3 talks about the final generation as lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, revilers, and ungrateful. Sound like anyone you know? Anyone that follows politics can answer that one. As an example of what this generation exemplifies, compare what we watch now on TV to 50 years ago. Not too long ago, the heroes in the stories were parents, businessmen, and the clergy. Now, the heroes are drug dealers, serial killers, vampires, and assassins. The bad guys are the parents, businessmen, and the clergy. That's a good guy, by the way. The guy with the human blood dripping from his mouth. And this hero? He's a serial killer. But it's okay because he only kills murderers. Unless of course he kills someone else. But there's always a good reason for that. Yes, I'm being sarcastic. And Christians? They're relegated to comic relief and hypocritical fools who are easily led and preach abstinence, yet turn on their faith at the first sign of temptation. This is a big shift in how the world views good and evil. Timothy wasn't saying that the generation that sees the return of Christ is evil, inasmuch as he was saying that the generation that sees the end will use their own definition of good. He's saying that the last generation will hate God's definition of good. And if you follow the news and see what's going on, you'll see that that's what's happening today. You could probably say that other cultures throughout the centuries could have also fit that same description. But I think this generation is unique in that its technology and ability for mass communication has made it so for the first time this description can apply to many cultures throughout the entire world. As a side note, talking about the intensity of evil in the world today, I've come across an interesting statistic. Both Mark 13 and Matthew 24 make it a point to talk about the increased warlike activity as we approach the rapture event. So consider the following. In the United States alone, the generation still walking the earth has seen more major conflicts than all the rest of U.S. history combined. And I'm not even including Syria or Iran, and we all know that's coming. The last point on the list is from Revelation. I know it doesn't say that on the list, but it will make sense in a minute. The book of Revelation is a New Testament book written by John the Apostle. This book is also known as the Apocalypse of John, so that should pretty much tell you the subject matter of the book. This last prophecy is perhaps the most disturbing, because it's currently unfolding in front of us, and it's like a slow, unrelenting freight train that we can't stop no matter how hard we try. Revelation 13:16 says that the last generation will see a time when everyone must have an identifier on the hand or forehead. There's a new law in the books that gives the U.S. government the power to mandate that very thing. I'm referring, of course, to House Resolution 3962, the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, the gift that just keeps on giving. About 3/4 of the way through the 2,000-page law that our oh-so-beautiful 2008 Congress passed without even reading is a section that gives total discretion to the government, namely President Obama, to mandate that everyone be implanted with an RFID device for the purposes of being put into a national medical registry. This RFID device is about the size of a grain of rice and can hold much more information than just medical. It can also hold financial information and includes a GPS that's similar to the ones in cell phones. RFID chips can easily be implanted into the hand or forehead. And our super fantastic Supreme Court recently upheld Obamacare, again, without reading it. In fact, one of the Chief Justices even commented that forcing them to read the 2,000-page document would amount to cruel and unusual punishment. So they all agreed that they should decide on the most important piece of legislation in perhaps this generation without even reading it. Your tax dollars at work. Revelation 13:16 says that the generation that sees the end will have the mark of the beast on their hand or forehead. Look at this picture. Now look at this one. I hope this concerns you as much as it does me. And the sad thing is, many people are going to want this. It could save lives in medical emergencies and protect an individual's finances from identity theft. I'm leaving a link to a great video that explains this part of Obamacare. I've also uploaded the video to my account, so you can find it here if you'd rather. What I like about this video is that it doesn't talk about the mark of the beast or take the approach that this is a fulfillment of any prophecy. He takes the approach from a political standpoint and only uses government websites, the RFID company website, and the Affordable Care Act itself as his references. It's as interesting as it is frightening, because the timeline requires this portion of the law to be put in place 36 months after the law passes, which will mean that they should start doing this in mid-2013. And as the US goes, so goes the world. I'm sure Russia and China wouldn't be far behind, and the UN would just be itching to implement this type of technology worldwide. I only really have one piece of advice for anyone who finds themselves in a post-rapture world, assuming we do have a pre-tribulation rapture. Never, 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 no matter what, under any circumstances, get any kind of mark or identifier on your hand or forehead, be it an RFID chip or something else. It will be tough, because only those with the mark will be able to buy or sell. Plus, there will be immense pressure to do this, with perhaps punishments attached if you don't. And now they can attach punishments and compel you to submit, since the Supreme Court created the precedent by upholding the Obamacare mandate. But given the choice, take the punishment. Anyway, those are the top 5 prophecies that I think any reasonable person would think would at the very least warrant consideration that we are in fact in the end times. If not, consider these other verses and prophecies, all currently occurring. If not those, there are many more. If you're not interested in the Bible, consider these non-biblical sources. I specifically didn't want to include the Mayan calendar coming to an end in my original list because it gave a specific date. And as stated earlier, no one knows the day or the hour of the return of Christ. However, I do think it's notable, not because it mentions the specific date of December 21st, 2012, but because around that time, a very rare planetary alignment will cause the sun to block the Earth from the gravitational forces of the center of the galaxy. This can make the Earth very unstable and vulnerable to major global change. This isn't as much prophetic as it is astronomical, and with all the recent tsunamis, earthquakes, tornadoes, and other extreme weather the world has been experiencing, I believe we're seeing the effects of it. So what can we take away from all this? Ask yourself one question. If the rapture is a true event, and it happened today, do you think you'd be one of the ones caught up, as Thessalonians says? If you have doubts, which I think everyone does, I recommend a YouTube video that lists out how to spiritually prepare yourself for the rapture. I put the link in the description below and I highly recommend it. I've also copied it to my YouTube account. It's less than half an hour long and is very eye-opening. I like it because it has an actual checklist backed by biblical verse. He asks yes/no questions, and you can say, yes, I'm doing that, or no, I'm not doing that. I thought I was a good Christian, but I was saying no more times than I cared to admit. But now I'm trying, and I think that's the key. What it comes down to is learning the Word of Jesus and actually changing your behavior based on it. In the end, it comes down to a choice. It's a simple choice, but an important one.